All right, let's get going. This is Michael Manjos, Chairman, Board of Finance. Good evening. Today is 4:23, 6 o'clock is our start time. This is going to be the Board of Finance budget meeting. Members, I'm going to call your name. Please confirm in the affirmative that you can hear us and we can hear you. John Ostrowski. John, can you hear us?
Sorry, still having technical difficulties. I'm here. Yeah.
There you are.
Hi, Mike. Sorry.
All right, good. Craig Hirsch.
Mike, can you hear me now?
I got you now. There you go. We're on a delay. No problem. Rebecca O'Donnell. Rebecca, can you hear us?
Yes. Can you hear me?
I got you now. Perfect.
Okay, thanks.
Dane, I won't even try the last name.
I'm here.
Great. Steve Kirsch.
I'm here.
And me, Mike Manjos. So I declare we have a quorum and we call this meeting to order. I'm going to also introduce staff that we expect to speak tonight. So Ron Bonovsky.
I'm here.
Heidi Mead. Heidi, are you there? We'll jump back to Heidi. First Selectman Ken Kellogg.
I'm here.
Also we have the Superintendent, Joe Cobza.
Hi, everybody.
Terrific. All right. I hereby declare we have a quorum and call this meeting to order. A copy of the agenda and any related materials have been posted and can be found on the Town of Monroe's website, www.monroect.org, for public inspection. This public meeting is being conducted remotely in compliance with Section 1 of Government Mont's Executive Order 7B, dated March 14th, 2020, using GoToMeeting electronic conferencing technology. Using this technology, the public shall participate in real time via computer, tablet, smartphone, or telephone using the access information set forth on the meeting agenda. Please be advised that each meeting has a unique participation information, so please be sure you've accessed the right meeting. Notice is hereby given that only 250 participants may access this remote electronic public meeting at one time. Access to this meeting using this technology is granted solely by the technology provider on a first access basis and is not controlled by the Town of Monroe. While it is anticipated we will not exceed this participation limit for this meeting, should it appear we are approaching said limit so that any member of the public is denied access to this meeting, I, as chair, adjourn the meeting and continue at a later date using technology appropriate to ensure all members of the public may participate. Please take notice of the following regarding electronic public meeting. This meeting is being conducted in real time. This is open to the public. Any member of the public may listen or view this meeting anonymously. This meeting is being recorded, and then while we may ask you to mute your microphones unless recognized to speak, that anything you say, do, or displayed in your screen may become part of the recording. That the recording will be posted to the town's website within 7 days, that the recording shall be made available to the public within a reasonable time. This meeting shall follow standard parliamentary procedure. However, I ask participants follow special rules in addition. Please mute your microphone so as to reduce background noise at any time you're not speaking. Prior to speaking on each occasion, each speaker shall clearly state their name, title for the record. Use the chat feature is prohibited and will not be considered during this meeting if in use. As set forth in the agenda, we will not feature public participation. All right. We got the business out of the way. Just a reminder, we're going to start in this meeting. We're going to go till probably 5 to 7. We'll jump off. We will go into our public hearing. And then on the separate call-in line that I think everybody has the information on. And then depending on how far we get tonight or how much more work or excited we are to keep going, we might jump back into this. So that being said, Heidi, I think you've got the budget worksheet for us to start looking at. I am going to maximize my screen so I can actually do this. So basically, like we've done in the last few years, we're going to just start updating numbers, playing around with different scenarios and seeing where it looks like we're at. And then we can go back and decide where we need to dive into things, where we want to address other issues, and see where we can go. So basically, let's see what we've got. You're up at the top. This is current year revenues, projected revised budget. These numbers will roll up. I think we probably want to start, Heidi, with revenues on the regular interest and all that kind of stuff.
Mike, keep that, please.
I'm sorry? I didn't hear you.
I keep cutting in and out on my computer. I apologize. Did you
No problem.
say something about the revenue that you want me to just?
I just want to, can we just scroll over? Is that the, there we go. That's what I want to see. Okay, perfect. So this is our current projections for this year. So the tax levy will calculate and roll up once we start adjusting. We did discuss that use of fund balance. And you guys did a calculation on where our estimate is at this point for fund balance, Ron?
Yeah, Mike. So at the bottom of the spreadsheet, there's a roll forward to that. So that 13 million is where we stood as of 7/1/19.
Okay.
And project the roll forward. We'll be using just shy of $1 million this year.
Okay. Was it my recollection that we had originally budgeted about 2 million?
2.3.
Okay. And what's the big change on that, or where do you think we're not going to need?
So if Heidi, if you could scroll up and we can kind of walk through the projection.
Nope, we've lost Ron. Just bear with us. Heidi, did Ron run off to grab something, or I don't see him anymore? There he comes back.
We're having issues with Heidi's mic, unfortunately.
Got it. Okay.
So Heidi's going to call in, and then we'll just.
Great.
scroll down the spreadsheet. So one thing I could dive into before
That's not me.
I would.
This is muted. That's not. Okay, we're good.
Sorry, people, we're just working through some.
Almost there.
No problem. I can hear you now.
There we go.
There we go.
Perfect. Sorry, we were getting feedback on the laptop in there. All right, so Heidi, if you want to start up at the top of the fiscal year 20 projection. All right, so that's just the tax collections projected
Okay.
from April
June
20th through the end of the fiscal year, the 357. So and again, looking at making our best guesstimate at this point under the circumstances on how the remainder of the revenues will roll out the rest of the fiscal year, Mike.
Right.
The big one,
Down good.
the big one down below, education cost sharing. We're in line to receive that. There's nothing. The state has promised that. I think the executive order states that. So
States that, yes. Okay, good.
that's the balance of the 2.7 we should receive. Okay. EMS, the next big number there on the run out. We were conservative with that because I believe calls are down.
Correct.
Projected that out at a 40,000 a month, which is about a 20% hit from what we typically average.
Yeah. Nobody wants to go to the hospital unless car accidents, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly. And then the other big number there is investment. We do expect to get something the remainder of the year, but it's tracking below what we've been receiving because interest rates have obviously taken a hit over the last 30 days.
Okay.
And we expect that to continue.
Okay.
Okay, so that being said, with those projections, we anticipate using of the 2.3 that was budgeted, we anticipate using 977,000.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good news to start.
Yeah. So I don't know how much you want to walk through the expense side. Under the circumstances, we're and this is a number that's I've had a chance to dig into a little deeper since Monday. The projected Board of Ed deficit looks like it'll be tracking around 500,000, assuming we do not go back to school.
Okay. And I mean, just so everybody refreshes, 3 months ago, we were projecting about $1 million deficit, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And that actually started tracking slightly higher due to special ed costs. So the big pickup over the as a result of our current situation will be transportation.
Makes sense. Okay. All right. So scroll back down to that number. So that's going to put us at 11 something. You said.
Mike, can I can I ask a question?
Sure.
Steve Kirsch, Board of Finance. Ron, to that last comment about transportation, what has there been an agreement between the Board of Ed and the transportation company?
So yeah, Joe, would you like to jump in, or you want me to?
Sure, Ron, I'll jump in and fill in as you feel needed. But hey, Steve, Joe Cobb's acting superintendent. Yeah, Steve, to your question, we have 5 contracts for transportation. All Star Transportation is that's our in-town base. That's the big contract. We also have contracts with VIP, Ed Advance, CES, and CTS. Per the executive order, we were asked to come to an amended agreement with those companies. So far, we've come to an agreement with 3 of them: the VIP, Ed Advance, and the big one is really All Star, the one that Ron was talking about. And just so you have kind of an idea of where that one landed, looks like we're going to pay about 65% of the remaining bill for the year. So I was pretty happy with that, because the numbers I was hearing from neighboring districts was somewhere between 75 and 85%. So Ron has the exact number, but I think that one alone saved, I don't even want to say, but I think it was a little north of $200,000.
It was 203,000 on the base portion of the contract, which is just the normal school runs, home to school runs.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
So that gives
That's
us an estimated 12 million at this point, right? As of June, for estimated June 30th.
Correct.
Okay. So let's run up to, let's go back up to the revenues. So I think the first thing we want to look at is supplemental.
Yeah. So Heidi, I think
Go
jump
to
over
the
the
right.
budget.
Perfect. So our current projections are 800. Obviously, I'm going to assume that's going to be higher than we would anticipate at this point, knowing what we know. So what I'm going to propose we do is just take some swags at some of these numbers, and then kind of roll through it, see where we end up, and then we can come back through and take a sanity check at it. If that works for everybody, I think that's probably the easiest way to approach this. Ron, does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely, Mike.
All right. So I would say let's knock that down 25% or 200 grand and see what the numbers start rolling out to be. And I'm going to assume that if people are struggling to pay this year's taxes, prior year taxes are going to be even harder. So let's knock another, I'm going to take 200 out of that one. Now, I was going to say interest is your big one. So what are we thinking here? I mean, obviously rates are going to be, I think the last Steve report I heard was about 0.7 or 0.8 compared to 2 was running this year.
Yeah, Mike, that's actually the tax interest, which will take a hit also as a result of the.
Okay, so that's the prior year. Okay, so that's not the revenue I'm thinking about. Okay. So what are we thinking on this? Take 150 out of that?
Again, for a quarter of the year, the rate's going to go down from 18% to 3. So.
Right. Okay. All right, let's just keep running through and then see where things are playing out. Because I know we talked about some round numbers last week, but I want to see if we get anywhere close to my theory was. Building obviously is going to take a hit. You want to bring it down to 150, maybe bring it down 75 grand? P&Z,
Mike, can I ask a question on the building
Please.
permit revenue? Steve Kirsch, Board of Finance.
Please.
Is that just a dollar value, or is that based on some number of permits at some average value? How do we get to 225 to begin with?
based on history, and it's a percentage on the value of the project is how they charge the fees.
That's correct.
Okay, so there's not really a way to look at this and say, okay, by reducing it 75,000, we're talking about X number of housing units. We're just doing it as a percentage of revenue.
No, and the majority of them aren't housing units. It's usually commercial.
Okay.
So you could certainly make the argument that it might get hit harder than that.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
I would listen to that thought process. So, I mean, again, anybody who wants to speak up and, don't be hesitant. This is just, this is brainstorming and throwing numbers on the page and seeing what we look like. Because
Yeah, Mike, Ken Kellogg for Selectmen. I agree with you, Mike. There's really no, it's a difficult one to estimate. You're correct though. It is based upon the value of the improvement. In most cases, there are some other permits that have some fixed fees, but the big dollars are going to be based on the value of the project. So, and it is a mix of commercial and residential. So
correct.
Yep. So
And Mike, if I could just add, Heidi had a chance to speak to Gunnar Gaylord, the
oh, good.
chief and building inspector, and he
Right.
he had no insight as to how it was going to play out. Too many questions for next year.
It's a fair answer. I mean, I understand.
There's
There's
a
a lot.
fair, honest answer. Yes.
Cool. All right. I don't think we'll worry about burning permits. Let's drop down to P&Z and take that down 10 grand. I would assume that's going to drop. Library, I'm assuming, is going to be, I would assume will come back once we get back to normal, but it'll probably be limited for some time, I would think. You want to take 5 grand out of that? Town clerk, that's, when we were running about 30% down, so let's take 150 out of that. And health, just let me understand, because just so everyone's clear, what are is that the health inspections and restaurant, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, Ken Kelly, it's a mixture of inspection fees, permit fees. I mean, most of that, I would say the largest risk there would be any, restaurant, if we have a loss of restaurants, food service establishments, that kind of thing. And there's potentially there's some
Not to be doom and gloom, but I have a feeling we're gonna.
There's some smaller stuff there too. I mean, there's like licensing of public pools, and if they're not allowed to be open, then you're in any of that. But that's a relatively small number in the grand scheme of things.
Right. You want to take it down 30 or 40, something like that?
We got to take it down. We got to take it down something.
Yeah, no question. It's got to come down. It's just a matter of, why don't we throw 30,000 and see what? Yeah,
I think that's more than enough for now.
okay. These are very much unknowns, ECS and municipal stabilization. So I would say let's leave that for now and see where we come out.
Yeah, we brought this up on a governor's call, and as you can imagine, they were somewhat non-committal for next year.
I would imagine. but I mean, nothing, no direction at all.
No, there was really no, it was like, oh, that's a good, yeah, raising a good question. I mean, let me put it, there was two parts to the question. One was about ECS for next year, and one was, interestingly enough, a town that was doing the deferment program, but then was also asking the state if they would accelerate the October payment to July because they now have a cash flow problem. So,
Well, I mean, I guess that's my fear is cash flow problems are going to be everywhere. I mean,
Right.
there's just no way around it. I mean, that was the discussion we had with town council last night is, cash flow is going to be an issue for everybody.
yeah, I mean, at this point, we really have no indication one way or the other. There was certainly nothing that suggested they were going to take any immediate action. So I don't have a lot of, I
Okay.
obviously been in close contact with our state reps and.
Yeah, I've been doing the same. So I
So
think
let's
that's,
leave this as is, because most of the time we hear people talking worst case, and if they're not throwing numbers of cuts out, then maybe we ought to just leave this for this pass.
I would agree. Let's roll through that.
If that makes sense.
Rec.
This is going to be another wild card because it's all going to depend upon what, if any, kind of programming we're going to be allowed to have, and that is still very much an unknown. Today's most recent call, the governor's task force is talking about releasing a plan by the end of May and possibly starting to reopen things in early, in early June, but in a measured way. So how that translates to rec types of programming is still very much unknown. So,
Well, I would have to assume
there's
that the
definitely
rec
some
program is, hang on, Chair. I would assume the rec programming is mostly summer driven, is it not?
yeah, and again, a lot of stuff. I mean, we're talking about stuff that is in the operating budget and not program funds. So I think a lot of this, I'll ask Ron or Heidi to just kind of jump in, but I think a lot of this is going to be driven around the pool membership fees and some of those.
That's what I thought, and I'm going to take a wild stab and think this pool's going to be, if it is open, it's going to be dramatically lower.
Yeah, Ron, is there any other
I
big?
don't see a lot of people congregating at the pool right now, or that being allowed for any.
Yeah, Ron, is there any other big driver in that revenue stream on OpEx?
Pool is certainly the biggest.
But I don't think there's any.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything of significance other than the pool fees.
So I agree, which should be taken down somewhat. Again, we're doing swags, so.
Right, exactly. I mean, I would think you'd take $100,000 out of that because I just don't think summer programs are going to be very easy to get going and
It's
comfort level of people to get into that.
it's very difficult to predict. I mean,
No question about it. I'd rather, let's take a conservative approach and see
so
where
we're
we
safe.
go.
If it were safe, I think people would probably flock back, but whether it would be at that point
Right.
from a public health
Yeah, we have a lot of
perspective-
unknowns right now.
Yeah.
All right. Police special duties, the next big one. You said that was running normally though, Ron, right?
Sorry about that. I forgot to unmute myself. So again,
I do it all the time. Don't worry about it.
that's money that's pulled actually out of the fund. So we've got balance there. So I wouldn't reduce that. You could actually look at possibly increasing that.
Right.
And that was last tracking well. So there should be money to replenish that, assuming it keeps tracking that way.
Right. That was the
Ron,
fund
this
that
is
we had like $1 million in there, but we had like 500 committed. Was that my recollection?
Correct.
Yeah, you've got police cars, equipment, some animal control projects, tasers.
So we could steal another 200 grand out of there.
Yeah, the only other thing you might want to think about as we think, I mean, it'll be later on as we look at the expense side. I mean, we have half the police cars currently
Coming out of there.
coming out of this versus OpEx, and you could certainly slide more over too, and that would have the same.
It would. The only fear I have with that approach is if I take two here, then I just gotta replace those next year, and it's gonna make next year much harder.
Not much worse. No, absolutely. Just
So I think I'd rather add 200 in here and leave the police cars in on the bottom side.
Yeah.
Does everybody agree with that?
I agree.
yeah, I have no issue with that.
Okay. EMS, that's been tracking lower, we said, right?
Well, I mean, it's very anecdotal, and we will get some solid reporting numbers soon. But I think anecdotally, yeah, there's certainly calls are continuing. But as you said, I mean, there's definitely motor vehicle stuff I could see is down, and I think a lot of
people are terrified to go to the hospital too. So
well, there's a lot of what you might call the more routine types of transport things that people might call 911 for and want to go to the hospital via ambulance that aren't. I definitely think there's some of that that's not happening. Again, this is also part of this whole, obviously EMS call volume is also tied intimately to this pandemic. So, God forbid, things change, then their call volume goes up, which we don't want to see. But that's why this is such a hard thing to predict as well. I would say at this point, my sense is that whatever we're seeing is going to be a reduction because, at some point, again, as we start to reopen and I would think this would normalize.
Knock it down 100 and see what that gets us.
I was thinking 10 or 20%. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
we're in the middle. There you go.
Yeah, it's probably a good. Yeah.
Inland wetlands, is that's similar to?
Yeah, I mean, there's some projects that, they'll continue to. Yeah, I mean, I would tie it with all the other land use stuff. I would,
Take $5 grand out of that.
I would come down a commensurate percentage.
Yeah, let's take 5 out of that. This is the fun one. Interest revenue. Where's Mr. O'Hara when I need him?
He did submit comments for your meeting later.
That's for the next adventure, yes.
It is, but I think you
I
can.
have spoken to him at length, and I know he's, he wanted to bring it down to 0, and I said we're not bringing it to 0.
He wanted to bring interest revenue to 0?
But yes.
The stiff rates come down this month. It started out the month at 0.91%. It's now at 0.72.
Correct.
And I'm sure it'll keep trending accordingly.
I think so too. I know we have to bring this down dramatically. I'm not ready to go to 0, but this had jumped up. I think we had originally budgeted like 300 last year, and then because the rates had crept back and we had some good investment things in the stiff policy, it was going well. But I think you got to knock at least 300 or 400 out of this.
300 is 50%.
Ron, what are you thinking?
Well, the rate, I'm just trying to see I know the rate started out above 2%.
Right.
At the beginning of the fiscal year. Yeah, you'd probably have to shave it a little more than that, actually.
Take 400 out of it and see what that looks like.
Yeah.
Okay. Just refresh my memory. What's the miscellaneous income revenue?
It's a variety of things. The biggest thing that usually hits that is an insurance. I think they call it it's basically a small refund of that Kerma pays the town for the lap and workers' comp.
It's a distribution of their earnings, basically.
Got it.
Exactly.
So it's,
After
so we can
the
leave that,
end
you
of the
think?
fiscal year.
Yeah, it's per
'Cause if
capita.
anything, insurance companies have been kicking money back because of the lack of activity.
Yeah, one of the things that we were going to bring up at, either later tonight or at a future meeting when we start talking expenses is that they already advised us that they're going to go flat on the lap policy for next fiscal year. So it's consistent with that.
Okay. All right. So let's leave that alone. So do we talk fund balance here? Ron, you muted again?
Oh, sorry, Mike. So yeah, so the whatever the way Heidi's got the spreadsheet actually working is you can populate it down below and it'll feed up here. So
Okay. Well, let's populate it down below then. I know I had thrown out the 7.5 last month. Let's throw it in at 8 now that we know it's a little stronger than we thought. See what that looks like. So that's basically saying that's using 2/3 of it, right? Is that
Correct.
the calculation? Almost exactly. Look at that. Okay. And then, okay. I was gonna say that didn't look right.
Yeah, something's wrong.
I think you got 1 0 short. There you go. Beautiful. That's the number. Okay. Let's shoot down the bottom and see.
So are you saying, Mike, that we're going to be left with 4 million?
That's the number. So that's on today's estimates. That's what it looks like. Yeah. So let's just plug in one more. I know we had also talked about bringing down the spend for salaries and that kind of thing. So let's just plug me in 1.5 million taken out and see what it looks like. I want to get to the point where we see where our collection rate, if we get it to flat. So if that goes down to 90, what does it bring us to? Too much. 92? Still too much. 93? Got it. All right, so basically that means we're lowering our taxes by collection rates, taxes by 3.8 million. Is that what I'm reading?
Where are you looking?
Top line? Just changed. 3.5.
Mike, I missed what you wanted to see.
Oh, I was down at the bottom, but now I'm at the top. I'm interested in this too. So the property taxes, Steve was asking where I'm seeing. I'm looking at the 3756 change there at the bottom.
Got it.
All right, so scroll back down to I just want to look at those numbers at the bottom again. Because I was really hoping to be at a 92. And again, I've been reading and talking to other people, and it's a little, I don't know if anybody else noticed it, but Shelton, came out and said they were going to do a 0 increase, and that was great, but he's assuming a 98% collection rate, which I think is fairly aggressive based on everything we're seeing.
Yes, I don't think you can carry your existing collection rates forward.
There's no chance in
Yeah.
that
No.
collection rate. The question is how far down do we need to be safe? Now the good news is this is still leaving 4 million in fund balance, so we're not shooting every bullet at this point. Whereas, a week ago when I talked about this, I thought we were only gonna be left with 2. So I'm a little more comfortable knowing that I've got a little bit more cushion there, assuming our projections are right.
Yeah, Mike, I got a question for you.
This is Ron.
Good job. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, John Ostrowski, Vice Chair. So the reduction you're looking for in salaries, the $1.5 million we've got in there as a placeholder. Where are we with knowing if there's any better information around that number? Because that may have a big impact on where we go with the percentage.
Correct. So I talked to Joe's on the call to the superintendent, and he has reached out, and they are talking. And again, I don't want to get in the middle of that, but the discussions are being had. So nobody said, go pound sand, we're never going to talk to you. So I'm hoping we can make that happen. But to your point, you're right. That's an assumption that we can do that without cutting a lot of services. But again, I don't think, looking at our revenue, just a quick back of a napkin revenue numbers there, I don't think we're unrealistic there. You could certainly make arguments on individual lines and bring a couple of them up or down, but I guess the big question becomes, and again, I want to talk this through a little bit, is, Ron, what was our collection rate on automobile and personal property to begin with? I know we had a mixed number, right?
Yeah, going back a couple years ago when there were 2 separate mill rates,
Right.
There was a separate collection rate. Mike, I'd have to go back and look. I don't have that.
Automobiles or personal property taxes was like 95 or 93 or something, right?
I think for personal property, we actually had that lower at closer to 92%.
So my fear is that personal property is going to take a big hit because obviously landlords aren't collecting rents. They're less likely to pay taxes on time. If businesses are going out, personal property is not going to get paid. If we had bankruptcies, that could take a big hit. I'm wondering if it's worth having the assessor maybe over the next week give us a breakdown on those numbers, and so we can kind of run some scenarios and say, hey, if personal property is 85 and housing is 95, where does that meld us at? Does that make sense?
Hi, Mike. Yeah, John Ostraszewski, Vice Chair. That does make sense. Looking at the collections to year to date that we got at the last meeting, only 3 million out of the 78 is personal property, and that was at just shy of 96% collection. So the biggest piece is real estate, and that was at 98. So that's really, if we bring it down to 92, it's a blended rate that may not be bad, but I'd like to see the detail as well.
Right. And right now with this model, we're at 93. Is that correct, Ron? That's right. Gets us to 0 or slightly under.
Hey, Mike, it's Rebecca. Can I ask a question?
Please, 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 please.
Okay, so I know I brought up, like, 12 years ago when we went through the recession. But I'm wondering, since this kind of feels much worse than that, is there any data that at least we can look back to know that we're on the right track with this?
There is, again, totally off the top of my head, I remember going through the CAFRs a few years back, and I think the worst collection rate we ever saw was like 97.
Okay.
But again, Ron can verify that, and we can certainly pull those kind of numbers. I think what we want to do, what I would want to do for this week is make a request for the assessor to kind of give us an analysis, an historical analysis, a breakdown of what properties, what's the worst kind of by each property, because to Ron's point, everybody else's point, I think obviously personal property and motor vehicle are at much higher risk than residential. Right. Residential will eventually get. And since we're still expecting for up to 14 months out here, we might not be quite as bad, but I would love to see those breakdown numbers to see what it would take to blend to get to the 93.
Okay.
Because again, my original thing was basically a gut, and it just said, I can't imagine it could be worse than 90, so let's see what that looks like. This basically, yes, it takes $1.5 million out of the budget, but I don't think it's devastating by any means.
Yeah,
Okay.
Mike, I can definitely, we'll definitely follow up on that. The breakdown from a grand list perspective is already in the budget book on those different categories. So from that perspective, we can easily get that. We can certainly make sure from the assessor that it's the most current information, that we haven't had any change.
And I would love to have it just in a spreadsheet that we can again do the same modeling kind of thing.
But as far
we
as
can have it like this.
as far as the collection experience, that'll come from the from Deb, the tax collector. So we can take that as a to do.
Okay.
Okay.
No, I like the direction that this is going, though. I mean, this feels appropriate, but I was just wondering about past data. That's all.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I want to get as much analytical stuff together that we can look at and make sense. I'd also like to do the same thing with revenues. If we go back 5 years, or what drops did we see in in different areas that when the recession hit, as far as building projects and that kind of stuff. And this is a unique situation, but I think you're right to look to the past and see if we can get anything out of it. It would be good.
And Mike, while you're Ken Keller, first selectman, while you're talking that, I did find the last time in the 17-18 budget where there was a different mill rate. In the budget, the assumption on the grand list for real estate and personal property were both set at 99% even, and the motor vehicle collection rate was set at 94.5.
Okay.
Now, how close we came to hitting those, I don't have that information.
I think we came pretty close, to be honest with you.
I'm sure Manny went over.
Would not be surprised if Manny went over. All right, just everybody keep in mind, we got about 5 more minutes, and I want to jump off this, and we're going to jump on to our public hearing call. I would say, depending on how long that runs, I wouldn't mind jumping back into this just to do another to-do list and what we thing. I would also love to see for next week what the salary breakdown increase would look like, so we can see how close that gets us to the 1.5 if that happens, and see what else we might have to take a look at. I also think we need to. I know we talked about capital projects and, you know, the elimination possibly of that. So I don't know how much is in this budget that will come out based on that run, but it's another thing I want to look at.
Mike, this is Rebecca again, Board of Finance. I had a question on the salaries, if I can ask that. With the request for it to be on raises, is it step and raises, or is it one? Is it just the salary
My request
increase?
was for both.
Okay.
Mine was to hold at existing numbers.
Okay, got it.
Hey, Mike, it's Craig. Can you hear me?
Yep.
So on the deferred raises, I know we don't have an answer yet, but did we give them a timeline, or do we have our timeline when we need an answer by? Did we communicate that?
I did not give a timeline because I was trying to go into it as nice as possible, and I didn't. I mean, we certainly have another 4 weeks. So, I mean, I would hope we would have some indication by next week, but I understand if it's going to take a little time for them to talk to their people and to, come to a conclusion. I mean, it's a big ask. I understand. So, I mean, hopefully within 2 weeks we would have the answer, but it would be great if we could have a direction for next week.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you.
All right. Since we feel like we're at a stopping point, you want to take a 5-minute break and then we'll jump on the other call?
Sounds good.
Yes, I think we should recess until after the public
Yeah, that's
hearing.
what we're doing. Yeah. All right. Mute away, guys. We're back.
Mike, I don't know if you're going to want to take a roll call again.
I'm sorry?
Yes, I think you should. So I assume we're going to have one less member.
We'll give everybody a couple minutes. We'll see who's here.
Mike, this is Debbie. I missed the earlier one, and I just finished listening to the hearing. I just want to let you know that I'm back on the line if you had any questions.
This is Dan. I'm back.
Terrific. All right. We're going to run through everybody just to make sure who's back. John, you're there?
Yep, here, Mike.
Great. I think Craig had to drop, right? Rebecca, are you back?
Yes, I'm here.
Right. Dane, I heard you there. Steve Kirsch, I know you're there.
Yes.
Perfect. All right. We can resume. I think we left off kind of setting out a game plan for next week. So obviously we talked about the assessors. Information we want to get from the assessor and the tax collector for next week.
Yep.
Mike, since Deb is now present, do you want to just circle back to the discussion we had, because she was indicated she would have to provide information to us?
Yeah, but I'd rather have it in a spreadsheet that we can manipulate and play with. So I think we're going to want to pull a lot of data together, and I doubt she has it at her fingertips. So I think we should probably.
She didn't hear our discussion, so not to get an answer from her now, but to let her know.
I would rather just put it in writing and send it along.
Okay.
Ron, have you, could you pull together a list of us of the wage increases for next week as well? Just so we can know what those numbers look like.
Yeah,
Mike, this
you
is
want
Steve.
both Town and Board of Ed.
Yes, sir. You're wearing two hats these days, so we'll let you do both.
Mike, this is Steve. Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Do we have or can we get a list of contracts that are currently being negotiated that would be settled before the new budget would take place?
I believe there were 3 open contracts, but we can certainly get that pulled together. Yeah.
I can answer that on the town side for you right now. First Selectman Ken Kellogg. So the police union is currently in year 1 of a 3-year contract that starts this current, year 1 is this current fiscal year, and all 3 other unions on the municipal side are open effective July 1st of next year. I'm sorry, this year, next fiscal year.
Hey, this is Joe Cobbs, acting superintendent. On the Board of Ed side, we had the teachers contract that was negotiated. That's set to go into effect on July 1. 2 other contracts that we were to begin negotiations. Unfortunately, we weren't able to start them. We were supposed to start them the 3rd week of March, which obviously, change of plans there. The 2 that we have for next year, Steve, are the secretaries and the custodians on the Board of Ed side.
Thank you.
Ron, we didn't scroll through capital at all. Do we want to look at that, or do we want to set up we had talked about setting up something with the Board of Town Council, even though, I'm going to pushing everything off. I think we should still consider having that conversation with Town Council, maybe next week, but the following week.
Yeah, I think we should, Ken Kellogg, I think we should certainly, we absolutely should do that. We can figure out what the right timing is, but it certainly was my intention to make sure council is involved in that conversation. So I would appreciate that we reach out to them. Maybe, maybe a couple of weeks would be.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe the 7th. I'll reach out to the chair and see what she thinks.
Sounds good.
Okay. All right. What else would we want to look at for next week besides the assessor's numbers, the contracts? Anybody else? John, you got anything else on your plate there?
Hey, Mike, John Ostraszewski, Vice Chair. Those are the key things for me, other than when we get some more definitive information back on the salary holds.
Right. Okay. Rebecca, anything else on your list?
No, nothing on my list.
Dane, anything on your side?
No.
Steve, I know we had talked about also looking at a road plan that we have not gotten ready yet, but I hope to get that for next week as well. Anything else besides that? Because I'm going to jump ahead and assume that's what was going to be.
No, so now you're reading my mind. Okay. Mike, do we get a copy of this now? This spreadsheet as it's been updated, will that be something that will get sent to board members? I'm just asking a process question because I've obviously never.
No, to be honest with you, typically we don't share it because it's just a working document that we're playing with. So it's not something we have historically shared. We just usually work on it together as we're as a group. I don't know what the, technical issues are as, that goes,
Okay,
but
that's
I'll look
fine.
into it. Yeah.
I just wondered.
No, it's a good question. It's a fair question. I mean, it's a nice thing to have to play around with. Obviously, nothing's carved in stone at all. It's just working documents. So I usually don't like putting those out.
Okay, not a problem. And my last request would be, for the record, for the people on and for the public, would you restate or state when the next meeting date and time will be for this body?
Yeah, we are scheduled for next Thursday again, 6 o'clock. So April 30th.
That's all
That's all you got? All right. Does anybody have anything else they want to cover tonight, or should we wrap it up there?
Mike, this is Ron, Director of Finance,
Yes.
Ron Bonofsky. So I just want to clarify. So regarding the tax collector, you're going to look at, you want to look at the breakout of the tax lien based on, by, residential
Yeah,
versus
basically I want to see the breakdown of tax revenue by type, property type, by, vehicles, by personal property, by residential. And then if we could look, almost back as far back as we've got, so we can see ups and downs on collection rates on any of those pieces.
Okay.
Ideally, if we could put it in a spreadsheet so we could really look at, budgeted, collected by all the different types historically would be awesome. And then something we can manipulate for this year. That makes sense for everybody?
Great. Yep.
All right. Anybody have anything else?
Mike, do you mind if I just address
Please,
a couple
Joe.
of things?
I would love you to.
Thank you. Thank you. I just want to address something. I took a lot to digest the information that came out last week, and there's just a few things of concern. Obviously, there's a pretty big unknown here on the Board of Ed side, as some of the callers said, and what that means, we don't know. I can't even venture to guess what that's going to be. But there were three areas three things in two areas that I'm kind of concerned about. I just want to make sure that this board is aware of it. The first is in regards to excess cost reimbursement. So just as a refresher to folks, we file for excess cost reimbursement. That's the reimbursement we get for special education funding from the state. We file in December, and then we file again, I think it's on March 1st. So we had filed that, and the March 1st filing kind of projects out what we're going to spend for the remainder of the year. Obviously, we've negotiated transportation contracts, so we are not going to spend as much as we originally submitted. However, the expectation is going to be that we're probably going to receive what we're anticipating to receive this year in reimbursement by the way it works. The problem is excess cost reimbursement. If there needs to be an adjustment, that adjustment will happen in the 2021 school year. So I think that's important to know. Ron and Darlene and I, and Darlene's on this call as well, have kind of projected out possibly about $150,000. So we're a little concerned that the excess cost reimbursement next year could be lighter than we anticipated. Now that's one piece. Another piece is obviously, I'll just leave it as we don't know what we're going to get from special education. There are, unanticipated special education costs that, we can't venture to guess what they're going to be right now. But, we're hearing rumors around the state. So I just want to keep this board apprised of that. And then the last piece is I wanted to also address the 5-year capital plan as submitted by Paul Course. And I know Paul's on this call as well. I know the way that the process was described last week was no capital expenditures, and I understand that our technology plan is embedded in capital expenditure. We don't have those funds designated in our operating expenses. I think that was a decision made years ago. And the concern behind that is multifaceted here. The first one, though, is that we distributed over 800 Chromebooks to students when we went out with COVID. I don't know what's going to happen when we get back, how many of those 800 Chromebooks are going to come back and what kind of shape they're going to come back in. So that's a pretty significant concern. I know we had $152,000, of which $75,000 was earmarked for laptop replacements, and those laptops, that $75,000 was earmarked to purchase approximately 300 Chromebooks, to replace 300 Chromebooks that were at the end of life. And the importance with the end of life just means that those particular devices cannot be used for state testing, although all of our state testing, grades 3 through 8, is done electronically, and the SAT is moving in that direction too. So, pretty significant concern there with the capital, with some of those things in the capital plan. So I just wanted to make you guys aware of that. And Paul,
I appreciate that. Can I ask you a favor as well? Is it would it be possible for you to kind of give us, because again, my concern is, I hate to think this way, but what if we had a recurrence in the fall or in the spring and we didn't have the hardware to go remote again? Can you give us for next week a breakdown of kind of like your inventory of Chromebooks, how many are at end of life, how many were on just kind of maybe a one pager on explaining what you've seen the usage at, how many people take them from home, and what your needs might be expected to be, because I think that's an important thing for us to consider. I do try to get rid of all the capital, but we also need to be prepared, obviously, for the possibility that, heaven forbid, we may have to go through this again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Mike, this is Steve. If I may, along those lines, I think in your capital plan, in the technology plan, there was replacement, I think, of some of the infrastructure servers and stuff. Did this experience show weaknesses in those areas or help to drive home the need to upgrade some of that? And if so, I'd like to add that, ask that you provide that information to the request Mike just gave you.
Yeah,
so your question, Steve, is did the current situation basically expose any shortcomings in our current?
Exactly. Did you get overwhelmed at all? Were you overloaded? Were you able? Was the background ability? Did you have the ability to handle what you handled, or were there situations that we need to know about?
Thank you. Yep. Pause on this. So we'll
yeah, I can answer that. The question would be no, because obviously no one is on premises. So as far as infrastructure goes, one of the reasons why we were able to be successful with the distance learning is because a lot of the materials utilized are in the cloud. Sorry to say our network is fairly idle with nobody in the buildings.
Okay, thanks.
Didn't know. All right. Have anything else we need questions put together? All right. I would say, somebody want to make a motion?
Steve Kirsch, Board of Finance, motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Steve. Everybody stay safe. And we will touch base next week.
Stay healthy and stay safe, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks. Bye-bye.